Hello and welcome to the Drexel interview. I'm your host, Paula Marantz-Cohen, speaking to you from the Leonard Pearlstein Gallery of the Antoinette Westphal College of Media Arts and Design at Drexel University in Philadelphia. Today my guest is the acclaimed Israeli filmmaker Eytan Fox, director of such well-known films as Yossi and Jaguar, Walk on Water, and The Bubble, as well as the television series Mary Lou and the new comic feature Cupcakes. Mr. Fox's work in movies and television is wide-ranging. He deals with themes of sexuality, Israeli-Palestinian relations, the effects of the Holocaust on Jews today, and life in the Israeli military. I'm so pleased to have him with us today. Eytan Fox, welcome to the Drexel interview. Well, before we speak about your films, I'd like to talk a little bit about your upbringing and your formative experiences that have made you the filmmaker you are. Now, I know you were born in the United States, in New York City.
Right.
And moved to Israel when you were 2?
Yes, my parents were born in Chicago. I grew up in Chicago, then moved to New York, and then decided to move themselves and their 3 sons to Israel. So I grew up in Jerusalem.
So you are completely Israeli. I mean, I hear you have an accent.
I have a little accent, yeah.
But a very good English as well.
Yeah, well, my parents spoke English to us. They maintained a very American household in Israel.
What does that mean, maintaining an American?
Well, my mother was the only one baking apple pie. The other kids did not know what apple pie was, or what else. They ship in like Heinz baked beans and Heinz ketchup and stuff like that, because we didn't have those things in Israel. This was the mid-60s. Israel was not a very developed place. And yeah, and we went back and forth quite a lot. And the songs, the books my mom read us before we went to sleep, that was all very American.
American television.
And American television, a lot of people were exposed to American television in Israel. That's why Israelis have very good English. You know, when I travel and go to Italy, France, usually their English is not as good because their American television series were dubbed into Italian or French, and so they didn't really get a chance to like watch The Brady Bunch or Partridge Family or Hawaii Five-0 and learn English from these series.
But in Israel, they had them subtitled?
Subtitles. You have the subtitles in Hebrew, and you hear the English, and you learn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Movies. Now, I assume you also loved movies from an early age. What were the movies that you were particularly taken with as a child?
Well, my mom took us to many Walt Disney films, of course, and musicals, American musicals. I was very much into American musicals. And yeah, if I had Cupcakes, my last film is somewhat of a musical. But if I had all the money in the world and all the possibilities in the world, I'd make a big musical.
Interesting, because I want to talk to you about your love of music. It permeates all your films, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
I want to talk about your service in the Israeli military. That's mandatory for all Israeli citizens. And certainly you address that in some of your films, in Yossi and Jaguar, and in Yossi in particular, where you deal with gay relationships in the military. And I wonder what it was like for you being in the military. I mean, I guess we think of the military environment as very macho, and we think of the Israeli military in particular as even more so. Has it changed since you made those movies? And I wonder if your movies have had an influence on that as well.
I think they have. I'm proud to say that I think they have. But the Israel I grew up in was very, very different. Very more religious, very conservative, very macho. And everyone in Israel, has to go to the army. It's mandatory. Boys for 3 years, girls for 2 years. I went for 4 years for different reasons. So, and you're kind of trained and educated to become a soldier at 18. And that soldier is a very specific kind of man. And that man was sitting very heavy on our shoulders when I was growing up in Israel. And it took me time to realize that I didn't want to be that kind of man. Being that man came at, I think, a very costly expense. I think it's like, it was difficult for me to become that man. And at some point, all my films, I kind of negotiate with that man. I talk to him. There's that character there, Walk on Water, the Mossad agent. In other films, even the gay characters, there's always one that is more that old Israeli character from the old school, kind of tough, macho, very closeted, very emotionally problematic. and then there's someone maybe that represents me or someone that's trying to argue with that man and ask questions about him. So yes, I went to the army like all my friends, participated in the Lebanese War of 1982. A lot of my directors from my generation dealt with this war in their films, like my friend Ari Folman with Waltz and Bashir, my films, other films, Lebanon films that you might have seen that were theatrically distributed in the States. Yeah. It was very difficult.
So the military experience is formative for all Israelis. And it's interesting the way you put it, that it kind of creates a personality type, and your films interrogate that personality type, revise it, but it's still sort of there. So there are admirable elements to it, as well as things that you needed to obviously revise.
Yeah, I think, I really love that man. And then again, I don't know if hate him is a word, but I'm very conflicted with him. And I try to portray him as deep as possible and as well-rounded as possible. He has different sides, this man, but Israel, but I think like when I made Yossi and Jagger, it was a big deal in Israel, a very big deal.
Because it was a gay relationship.
Yeah, in the Israeli army. And that film really made a lot of change in Israel, created change. People, when the film came out, a lot of people were kind of nervous about it. But then, okay, the army said it won't support this film. And it's very difficult to make an Israeli film about the army without the army's help. You need its uniforms, its weapons, its bunkers, and so on and so on. They said, they read the script, said, we're not going to be putting money into this film. They didn't say it was because it was homosexual, it was because it was different ranking officers or something, and they just supported this other very heterosexual television show which had all that stuff going on between men and women. But then the film was made. We somehow made it without their support. The actors brought their uniform. Every Israeli man has uniform in his closet. And we made this film. And everyone was very passionate about making it. And then it became this very nice success in Israel and had its premiere, its international premiere in the Berlin Film Festival, and was bought for theatrical release worldwide. And then what the army did is they decided to take it and show it to soldiers. They have this special thing called a Sunday, Culture Sunday, because Sunday is when the soldiers come back to the army. And they show the film on a regular basis to their soldiers. When I made Yossi, the sequel to Yossi and Jagger, they already called me when they heard that I was making it and said, can we support, can we help, and so on and so on.
So it's a sea change then, or it is also that it was so popular. I mean, you could be cynical about it and say it was a very successful, popular film, and so they get behind it. Yeah. Or do you think there was there was a change of attitude?
There was a change. There were all these relatively important army officers who came out after the film kind of had its success. And things started opening up amazingly. I have to tell you this story. I suddenly remember this story. No, it's really, we had this withdrawal from Gaza, which was a big issue, the Palestinian Gaza. And it was almost civil war in Israel between people who were very much for leaving Gaza, like myself, and people who were against leaving Gaza, settlers who were living there, and so on and so on. The people who ran the show were this very high-ranking police officer and a very high-ranking army officer. Together, they were supposed to do this without casualties and just do it okay, and so on and so on. They were chosen Men of the Year in this big Israeli newspaper, and were giving this very big interview. And they were, and the interviewer said, okay, tell me about an emotional, personal moment that you had. And they said, the sun was setting, it was almost Shabbat, it was the weekend, the sun was setting, we were overlooking Gaza, and we realized that this was over. Gaza was back with the Palestinians, no casualties, no nothing. And then we felt like, they said, we felt like Yossi and Jagger. Oh. These two tough army police officers were saying we felt like Yossi and Jagger. They didn't mean we felt gay. They meant as two tough men, we felt close to each other. We felt connected. We felt something emotional that connected us. And I had
that
to
must have made
myself.
you feel
I said,
wonderful.
Look.
So it became almost a touchstone idea of closeness. I will say that there is, in your films, that feeling that is, that feeling of uplift at moments. Of course, you also have depressing things in your films as well. But just to follow up, referring back to something else you said that man, who's the Israeli prototype in the Army that you were sort of working around in
Yeah.
your films. I wonder, is there a relation to your father? Your father, who is no longer alive, I know, was a conservative rabbi, a professor at Hebrew University. Is there a connection there?
My parents did not find themselves in Israel, I think, that much. I mean, they were very not Israeli. And my father was tough in his own way. Yeah.
But he wasn't Israeli tough, is
No,
what
he
you're
wasn't
saying.
Israeli tough.
Okay.
I think it took him some time to kind of understand my films, appreciate them.
I guess I'm very struck by the father-son relationship in Walk on Water.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, and I wonder what you think about it. Maybe you could describe it to our audience. I think it's very compelling, even though it's not developed that much. But I think it's something that people watching the film, some people could relate to a great deal.
So in Walk on Water, we have Eyal, the Mossad agent, who is given by his father figure, the guy who runs the show in the Mossad, who's older, who's a Holocaust survivor. He's given this mission to penetrate a German family and somehow discover what happened to their grandfather, who presumably is still alive, their Nazi grandfather. And that's also a difference between the old Israel, that is still so connected and obsessed and traumatized by the Holocaust, and the younger Israel that is saying we have to go someplace else. It's a whole siege mentality where I think, and that's what Walk on Water is trying to do, is to say, look at the evolution of this Israeli man. It starts in the Holocaust, where people go through the Holocaust, and then they come to Israel and start Israel and say, never again. We will be tough. We will be strong. We will be survivors. We'll be heroes, for that matter, and we'll never let this happen again. And that made Israeli men and Israeli society very tough. Tough to a place where it became almost blind, I think.
So this Holocaust, and you feel that among the older people in Israel, the Holocaust still shadows them.
Yeah.
It still is a defining idea against which they measure themselves and think about everything.
You still have Benjamin Netanyahu whenever there's any problem, kind of starts waving the Holocaust flag. Never again will. Therefore, we are not supposed to speak to Iranians, certainly not, but also other neighbors, enemies of ours. So he uses the Holocaust in terrible ways. People manipulate or use the Holocaust to frighten people, I think.
There's the wonderful scene of the two characters in Walk on Water. The younger character is the Mossad agent and the German young man. Yeah. Can you describe that scene in the clip and how it represents, I guess, a new idea for Israel as against the one that's mired in the past?
So the way Eyal is supposed to connect to this German family is by taking the kids, the son and the daughter of this German family, to see Israel, especially the son of the family, who's visiting his sister, who lives in Israel. And he takes him to the Sea of Galilee. And the German starts talking about walking on water. And he's trying to walk on water, supposedly trying to walk on water, making fun maybe, but he really believes that walking on water is an idea that people should believe in, and maybe even can happen if you're purified, if you're all these very nice ideas. And of course, the Mossad agent is very cynical about these ideas and the whole approach to life. But then we see him kind of taken by this young German and by his idea about life. And he goes with him. He is saved by him.
So, this is where it all happened. Hey, Jesus! They lied to you! It's impossible to walk on water. Bravo! You did it!
You don't understand. You can't just come to the Sea of Galilee and start walking on water. If you could, everybody would be doing it. You need to prepare yourself.
And how would you do that?
Please, enlighten me. Well, you need to completely purify yourself. Your heart needs to be like it's cleaned from the inside. No negativity, no bad thoughts.
And then?
And then you can walk on water. I'm sure of it.
It's interesting that the German young man is gay, and the Mossad agent, who's his contemporary, is not, and is homophobic, at least in the beginning. And part of the drive of the film is to establish a closeness between these two characters, a friendship that's extremely moving. It makes me think also that, I mean, because in other films you have a relationship between a Palestinian and an Israeli, that you see the love relationship, and particularly maybe the gay love relationship, because it's marginal within the society, as a way to bridge difference.
Yes. I use it maybe first in order to create a problem.
To create a problem, and then to solve it,
And
sometimes not to solve it.
And sometimes not to solve it, or not to solve it in a very kind of happy ending, closed ending way. Yeah, I think that's what I've been doing with homosexuality or gay identity, is putting it opposite that man that we were talking about, and saying, okay, now you have to deal with this man, this other man, the gay man, and you have to deal with him and change.
And change, and maybe then be able to cross over to others.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's what I was saying. I was saying that because I managed to change Israeli society as far as the gay community goes. I kind of say to audiences sometimes, I'm very hopeful about the Israeli society, its possibility to change. It's changed with this issue, the gay-straight issue. Yeah. It might one day be able to change with the Israeli-Arab, Israeli-Palestinian issue.
What an eloquent way to put it. I mean, really, I haven't heard of, I mean, it's really maybe then some sort of a continuum.
Because some societies, and I think Israeli society was that kind of society, the whole concept of change is impossible. They're very closed, very conservative, very fearful. They're kind of fearful societies, full of fear. And they can't change. And suddenly I see, okay, Israeli society can change. It's changed with this issue, which is very close to me. It might change, of course, the Israeli-Palestinian issue is very close to me as well, and it might change there one day.
Music, we already touched on that. I want to touch on it again. You had this television series, Mary Lou, in Britain and the US. I don't know, it had a different title, I think, in Israel. Yeah. But it's been compared to Glee. Yeah. How do you feel about that comparison?
It's okay.
It's okay?
I like Glee. I like
and then you use music in so many of your films. And the latest film, Cupcake, is sort of built around an American Idol type competition, singing competition.
Yes.
What is this with music? What is your particular relationship to it?
I love music. I have a very eclectic taste. I can like very, very different kinds of music. So and I try to put these different musics into my films, and that also connects to the fact that the guy who mixed the sound for Yossi, my previous film, and for Cupcakes, was a French guy who didn't know me before. And then he mixed Yossi, and then he saw Cupcakes. He said, I can't believe, Eytan, that you directed both films. Yeah. They were so different. And I said, well, people sometimes, confine themselves to only one kind, film directors, or one kind of films, or to one kind of music. And I'm trying lately to kind of open up as much as possible. Say I can listen, or I can see serious films, like Bergman films, or Dardenne Brothers films, or Michael Haneke films, and then see, schlocky American films for that matter, or wonderful American films.
What's the epitome of a schlocky American film? You mean something like American Pie or something?
Yeah. And enjoy that, and it's like you can eat a wonderful dinner in a 3-star Michelin restaurant, and you can have a wonderful hamburger somewhere and enjoy, or pizza, So I'm trying also with music to say that I'm trying to say there's no high and low, or in my life there's no high and low. I mean, maybe I know something about high and low, but I enjoy both.
Well, I do think that's one of the great appeals of your films, is that the mood changes, and the way in which sometimes they're light and they're like romps,
Yeah.
And then they can get, even within the same film, you just talked about Cupcake versus Yossi, but
Yeah.
within a film itself, the mood can change quite radically.
Yeah, I think in the bubble it's very clear.
The
Because what we're
bubble,
trying to
yeah.
do is Israeli-Palestinian on the one hand, and then the Tel Avivian bubble. I love Tel Aviv. I live in Tel Aviv. I think it's one of the most wonderful cities in the world, really. And then again, it's surrounded by Israel and by Israeli-Palestinian conflicts and Israeli-Arab conflicts, and it's the Middle East. So that's part of what the bubble was trying to do, to say, yeah, we have to solve this contradiction or solve this, I don't know.
Oh, it's such a great film, The Bubble. And as it has been called a love story to Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Tel Aviv comes off as just this wonderful place to be. You're right. But then around it is the horror.
Yeah, people say, you know, there's Tel Aviv and then there's Israel. And that might be true. I hope that changes one day.
The charm of your actors. I am so taken with Ohad Knoller, who has appeared in 3 so far.
Yeah, of course.
The Yossi films and The Bubble. And he's incredibly charming and handsome when he's young. And now in the Yossi, he is a little
Chubbier. You can say that.
A little older, but still charming.
Amazing.
And then in The Bubble, I love this character, Daniela Wurser.
Yeah.
The most charming woman I think I've seen on film in a long time. And Alex Himmelman on Walk on Water charmed me to death. And there's almost an aggressiveness to their charm, if you know what I'm saying. And I'm wondering about how you find them, and are you aware of this, and are you like charmed by them, and how does this casting go about?
Well, I'm a very character-oriented, actor-oriented filmmaker.
Yeah.
It's really, for me, it's really about the acting and the actors. I fall in love with my actors and actresses. I have these love stories with them. It's really about, the performance comes out of this love story that we create. And like with Yossi, I really sat with Ohad Knoller and we talked. He was very confused about taking Yossi and Jagger, which was such a film that we believed in. Ohad won the Best Actor award in Tribeca for Yossi and Jagger, and he was very confused about what if we screw things up? What if we don't do this right? The sequel for Yossi and Jagger, Yossi. So we sat together and we talked about our lives. Ohad just got divorced. I was going through my midlife crisis. We were talking about stuff and really trying to examine and process our lives and use that in our films. So I think it's really about creating a very protected atmosphere for the actors, about creating a family. And
so there is a sense of repertoire, of a repertoire
yeah,
group.
there is.
They do reappear, of course, your actors in different
like Leo Ashkenazi, who's I think Israel's biggest television theater star. Our relationship started in Walk on Water, and he's been having little roles, cameo roles, bigger roles in all of my films. So, and he's a dear friend as well.
We talked about the fact that your films are not shown in certain parts of the Arab world. Yeah. But I wonder about how you feel the reception varies of your films in Israel versus other parts of the world, Europe, the United States. Do you feel there's a difference?
The places where I have an audience are Israel on the one hand, and then France and the States. That's like, films have been shown in different strange places all over the world, but the big audience is in France and in America.
How do the French respond?
The Bubble was received very controversially in Israel, and in France they really loved it. I think that's the film of mine that they most loved.
Of course, the characters speak a little French in it too. They've been flattered by that.
Probably. It's for Israel, have 2 soldiers that are gay. That's okay, but if you have an Israeli and a Palestinian that are gay, that was a bit too much for Israeli audiences at the time.
I see.
But for Arabs, really, French liked it a lot.
Okay.
Americans liked Walk on Water more than The Bubble. So it's every country and different audiences have different tastes.
It's interesting that the Americans liked Walk on Water so much. I know that my friends loved that film the most of your films. We're almost out of time, but I wonder if you, looking at your career, and Cupcakes is your latest film, do you see an evolution, or is it more that you sort of move around among genres and styles and so forth? Do you see yourself moving in some particular direction?
I just realized I don't have that man in Cupcakes. I don't have a soldier. I don't have someone wearing Tzahal uniforms, Israeli army uniform. Maybe that means something. Maybe that I've overcome my inner difficult dialogue with that man. Maybe I don't need that anymore.
Interesting. Do you have a film in the making that you're the next next one?
Yeah, making my biggest film to date. It's a biopic about a singer called Mike Brandt, who has Jewish history in his life. His parents came from Auschwitz to Israel. He was born in Cyprus on the way, and he had a very bad childhood with his mother being institutionalized, and hospitalized. And then he goes to France and becomes a giant star. Huh. But then, being second generation Holocaust, he becomes very depressed, and kills himself at the age of 27. And this is a very big story. French people adore him, still buy his CDs, Mike Brandt, and in Israel, of course. And and he wasn't that man either.
Yeah, he wasn't that man. That man is gone.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. He actually escaped that man as well. He went to live in France where everything was different. He didn't go to the army.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you very much for being with us today, Eytan Fox.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today at the Drexel Interview.